Today, I want to invite you to join a conversation between myself and two of my favorite fellow coaches on the topic of intuition. These two women are some of my favorite human beings, and I meet with them on a regular basis, and we have fantastic conversations and really enjoy our time together. So, after talking about it, we decided that we should share a little bit of that magic with you all. I hope you enjoy this video. Grab your favorite drink, get comfy, and let's chat.
Well, so I thought maybe it would be fun just to start out with some introductions and let
Hello, everyone. My name is Cristina Sosa. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a life coach. I'm a very proud business owner of Life Path Coaching. I do one-on-one coaching, and I am a Latina, and so one of my main focuses is helping serve the BIPOC communities.
I go by Helen, but I'm also known by Healing Hands Helen. My niche is self-expressions, vulnerability, authenticity.
We actually were a part of a life coaching cohort, which gave us an opportunity, first of all, to even get connected to each other. But it was another thing when we actually got to listen to our intuition. That intuition told us, like, let's connect. And thankfully, through Helen, we were able to continue to grow together and create spaces like this where I feel like it's so important to bring different thoughts, insights, perspective, and knowledge to be shared with the world. As someone who I look up to, Jay Shetty mentions, it's so important to make wisdom go viral. And I feel like that's what we're doing right now.
my request is that you explain it as if you were explaining it to a 5-year-old. And then I know that all the language that is shared will be universally something that people can hold on to.
You know, when we're young and we're not so much in our mind, when we want to say an example like kids cry when they want something, right? When they're young, but when they're 5, they can express, or even as in like, oh, they want ice cream, they urge for ice cream, or they say something they want it, they just say it. There's no filter, like, oh, does mom and dad have enough money, or is that going to be okay for my health, or they don't think through the process. So for me is intuition is something that it doesn't go through filter, and it just comes out organically. But yes, maybe of course certain things like, okay, am I gonna go to Egypt? Like, I know I have a calling to go to Egypt, but right now, of course, that there's planning and stuff, but my gut and my intuition say, there is something there for me, right? But there's like, it's just that that is there. It's just the way that I would say the intuition is, it just comes out and you don't even doubt it.
And so I think it's so fascinating for us to be talking about intuition, because I think it can be so many things, because once again, we know language can only go so far, right? And so for me, I was really reflecting on it this morning, like, what is intuition? Because I will say, for a long time, y'all, I was not tapping into my intuition. And so I think that'll be somewhere we'll get to in this conversation today, is how do you listen to your intuition? Because as I mentioned earlier with Felix, I said my intuition was speaking out to me, and I'm sure some people are like, what does that mean? Or like, how did you know? And so to me, intuition is like an inner voice or a feeling. And I think it is, as Helen mentioned, it is something within us, like similar to, I believe that we have a higher self within us. It is like our spirit, that I truly believe that we are spirits in our physical form, and one day we will leave our physical form. And so I believe that intuition is tied to your spirit, but it's that light bulb moment, I feel like sometimes that can happen when you're, really thinking of something and you're like, this is it. I just feel like it can come to us in a lot of ways. And I think often we think of it as like stop and go. It can be the thing that says green light, or it can be red light. But I also think it dives into spirituality a little bit, and our intuition dives into our purpose and helping us align and live into that. And I think once you continue to tap more into your intuition, you can live more into your purpose, and continue to figure out where you want to go green and keep going, or where you want to go red and say stop. My intuition tells me no. Once again, y'all, if you look up intuition, it is tied to psychology. It is tied to quite a bit of different things. And so it has been proven, if you will, despite the fact that, in my mind, some things, like, despite it not being able to be proven, I still fully believe. I feel like it is a guide within ourselves, and it is a guide that as time goes on, as Helen, you're mentioning that inner clatter in the mind, like our voice, the multiple voices we're hearing, whether that's our ego, whether that's other people's voices, because I truly believe that is one thing that can pull ourselves away from our own intuition the most, and start to, what I was doing is start to tell my intuition, like, shh, no, someone else knows better. And so then I started to tell my intuition to like hush down. And so what ended up happening is my intuition, like, it was very quiet. And so I often was not able to hear it. And oftentimes I was listening to others to help me to guide me, if you will. And so I was not making those choices for myself. And a lot of my choices were not aligned with me. And that's how I knew I wasn't listening to my intuition, but had no clue that's what that was. I feel like your intuition is something you have to tap into and spend time getting to know. And I think that's, taking quiet time, whether that's meditating, whether that's taking time to even ask yourself how you're feeling after something. For example, a time I really started to see my intuition popping up was friends or people that I had used to surrounded myself with, and realizing as I left, I was like, when I go to these places, something feels like my gut's telling me, like, oh, maybe you shouldn't go, like something, but that's you telling you're feeling like, oh, maybe I'm just not up to it or whatnot. And then as I was leaving, say, for example, an event where I felt so drained from being around these people, I felt like everyone was so negative, people were criticizing other people, and I left feeling so exhausted. And all I could think was like, okay, what is this? Like trying to just take a moment to like dive in a little deeper. And my intuition, was guiding me to be like, these aren't your people. Like, yes, there was maybe a time where you two, like you all, like, there was a time you all served each other, you all, whatever it could be, but you have outgrown this space. And so it was helpful for me to be able to be like, I need to, like, thank you, we had a beautiful time, but I needed to take that time to create new friendships, such as people like Helen and Brooke, where I can be in the space where my intuition can thrive, and I can listen to other people who are listening to their intuition or who are going on these spiritual journeys.
Sometimes things like intuition get labeled as like woo-woo. And I
Mhm,
want to laugh about
mhm.
that because a lot of the things that people associate with being woo-woo are actually scientifically proven and used by all kinds of industries, government, to help people do the things that they need to do. But it is really cool to see that it's not just how I feel, it is proven. And the more you understand about intuition and how it works, the more empowered you are to tap in and trust your own intuition. And I'll link my intuition video here so you can learn more about it and make decisions for yourself. For me, in the simplest of terms, when you are quiet and you shut out the world and you ask yourself, is this right for me? Do I want this? Listen for the yes or no, because it will be that clear. Sometimes, if you're out of practice with listening to that inner voice, you can rely on your physical response to something. If you are about to go do something and you have like a pit in your stomach, like you have a stomach ache or you have tension in your chest, or you are just like your body is telling you no. And so maybe you can't hear the, inner voice as we refer to it, but maybe you can feel you're feeling kind of sick because
Mhm.
you are internally so stressed out, and you might be disconnected from that voice, from your emotions even, but physically you will still feel it. Just like if it's something that's really positive, you are really excited about it. I know that this genuine reaction kind of goes back to what Helen was saying. Children are the most genuine, right? Because society hasn't ruined them yet with making them feel shame and all of these things that make us smaller. They're just who they are, and they're just experiencing life for the first time. And so they're very free with what they say, which is why I love listening to little kids. But you are naturally gifted with knowledge about what you do and do not want. If you give yourself time and space, the answers you need will come to you, even if they're not what other people would want for you. You know what you
Yeah.
want for you.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. It's just funny that, it can come in different forms, right? Like you said, Brooke, sometimes that it comes in when you're in a quiet moment and you're silent and you listen to that very, very quiet voice. And sometimes it really just comes in when, out of nowhere. You're just like, what? And that's where that unfiltered children voice that comes to me, certain things that, I'm just going to say, hey, excuse my language, fuck it, I'm just gonna do it. I'm just gonna say it. I'm just gonna say it. And certain times when with our interaction, I'm like, and when you say woo woo, and I'm like, yeah, you know what, it is a little woo woo, but I'm just gonna say it and I'm just gonna put it out there. And whether or not it's going to work, you allow other people to make that choice. When I was called with my intuition to reach out to my doctor, OBGYN, and then I'm doubting myself. What do I have to contribute? But then yet shifting that perspective, would I say that to my daughter? Then I'm answering my own question. So that I'm like, well, doctors need healings too. They're humans. So maybe because it's my joy, maybe it's my charm, maybe something. So then I started to give myself affirmation why I should reach out to her. Because when you see them like, as a superior. And it was difficult.
I feel like a couple of different scenarios come to mind, but I think I will share one of like my most impactful where it really was that aha moment of, oh, this is me tapping into myself and listening to that inner voice and feeling and realizing how long it had been there, but I just had silenced it that much. And it kind of does tie to that story I was sharing earlier where I had worked in higher education for 5 years. And keep in mind, y'all, for one thing, I am first generation to attend college, and I'm also one of the only people in my family who has the privilege of being documented and having the ability to get some of these jobs, say, for example, that are salary, that have benefits. When I got this job, the instant everyone's like, you made it, like, you're good, you locked down, you stay in that job. As the years went on, I was sharing with people, I love the students, I love the work that I do, but it is very draining because I don't feel supported. I feel like each year we lose people and their jobs don't get filled. They actually duties get spread out. And now I'm randomly I have so many hats that I'm taking off and putting on where I'm wondering like, where does one job end? Where does one begin? And so I would share these things, but everyone's like, you shouldn't question this. You got a solid job. You're having your benefits. And it was because of people's fear of like what would happen to me if I were to leave this job and say not get another job. Maybe this job, say, wouldn't get paid as well. I didn't realize for a long time, but I was really letting their guiding voice tell me like, no, stay, stay, stay. And y'all, I experienced in those 5 years 2 deaths of the most important people in my life. And I did not get any flexibility or support from the institution for both of those deaths. And the first time it happened, it was for my grandpa, Dwayne, may he rest in peace. And I remember they were still calling me as I was there by his deathbed, telling me like, are you going to be back next week so that you can meet with some of the students to get the ball rolling? Because my position was very new and I would be helping with orientation, which kicks off the year. And so my mind is like, oh, shoot, I'm letting someone down. And in like the back of my head, I'm like, no, this doesn't feel right. Like you should be here. Like you shouldn't rush the process because I knew we were going to lose him. And as soon as we lost him, we would have then like get things ready for the funeral. I knew it didn't make sense, but I listened to their voices, which were like, you don't want to let people down in this position. It's okay, right? Like you're going to be okay. I experienced that loss. And for so long, I didn't get a chance to heal. And I felt like that was wrong. I felt like that wasn't okay that I was in a job where I didn't get that support. And I almost felt like it was like, put it to the side. You can deal with like the life stuff later, focus on business first. I still kept going despite the fact that I felt like that was not right. And then just a couple years back, 2 years ago, my grandma, Pat, passed away. And so once again, I returned back to my hometown so I could be there on her deathbed. And the exact same thing happened, y'all, where I was getting calls from my supervisor. I was getting calls from students who had been directed to call me instead of calling like the people I'd set into place to manage everything. And all I could think about as I was sitting beside my grandma, because I was the only one there, was like, I'm on this phone, and if she can hear me, all she can hear is like me talking about business things, right? She doesn't hear me like praying to her. She doesn't hear me telling her like, thank you for being such a light in this world. Like you're here, you're okay. Like someone's here with you. I realized like at that moment, I'm like, this cannot happen again. You cannot leave to go put out fires. And so at that point I told like them, you need to stop calling me. I have my plans in place. I literally got up like crack of dawn this morning to pray everything I could, despite the fact that I didn't know this was happening. And like, I need you guys to leave me alone. And then, of course, as I took my 2 weeks off, I was still getting calls and like, hey, like, can you just check on this? Can you do these things? And it was at that moment that I really did start to hear that voice saying, like, this isn't right. And if your values are that you prioritize and love your family, this job has not let you do that. It has told you that that's not a priority. Your priority is your work first and then family second. And if your values say that family is first, then you need to leave this job. And it was at that point I'm like, no, like I started being able to start putting the steps into place. And keep in mind, y'all, it wasn't like I was able to put in my 2 weeks notice like as soon as I got back, but it did start me into getting into the place of starting to ask myself, what was it that I really wanted? You know, what was it that aligned with me and that felt right with me? And that felt like I was, connecting into my inner self. And that was telling me like you need to leave. And I really do feel like that moment was like, I talk about this, the universe will scream and it'll whisper. And I feel like my intuition was really, like screaming out at that point to be like, you cannot do this again. Like, you cannot be put into these positions where you have to make choices that do not align with you, where you will look back years from now and be like, I wish I didn't do that, because I wish I would have listened to my intuition. And it's so hard. But the reason I share that is because I do feel like it opened the gates. And as then that started me in the next chapter where I was like starting to listen more to my intuition and be like, no, you don't have to be quiet, like speak out. And that's where I got into Mind Valley and then continued to open up the business and all of the pieces where intuition flowed.
Bad that it has to be that severe for you to discover like enough is enough. Why does that have to be like that? It's not healthy, but we all know that, because we are so result driven and, obviously, that you care so much for others before you care for yourself.
Yeah, and I think that's a strong point, Helen. Exactly that. Where instead of waiting sometimes for these big moments to happen in life, we can start to connect, start to reinvent ourselves and not have to wait for this make it or break it moment, right? Where you're in a crisis. I think that's a very great point, Helen. And I think it just shows every day can be us doing that work just a little bit, whether it's reconnecting with ourselves, whether it's building that self-worth, whether it's navigating that road of self-doubt, whether it's like, I'm going to listen to my intuition today. And if I don't even know what that means, like, let's just start today, And so I think that's powerful, Helen.
For some leaders, they are not really invested in the well-being of their people. They're just invested in the bottom line. And that, to me, is unconscionable because you are leading humans, not robots, and you should care what's happening to them in their life, and you should have compassion in their direction, and you should understand, even if you don't know the minutia of it, you should know that if someone is in a difficult place or suffering on any level, that you need to actually have some empathy in their direction and try to make plans with them to accommodate that, right? The work will still get done, but you just need to help them make a plan.
Or not even disturb them.
Right. Well, and
that is quite simple.
Helen, that sounds awesome, but I'm telling you, there are so many pressures that I think sometimes people just forget that, like, there are some times when you have to be willing to tell people above you, hey, this thing is not going to be done because this person is out on bereavement right now, and that is why. And we will do our best to patch it together. But man, there are just so many people that do not have that sense of decorum, right? It used to be a societal expectation that you respect those boundaries. But now I feel like there's almost like this permission that you can just run across that boundary, like that you can just do whatever you want, and that people aren't really people anymore. They're just there to do tasks. And I'm like, yeah, if that's the type of employee that you want, then you're going to have outcomes that don't match your expectations, because employees that are willing to like be in it to win it, to do the work because they believe in it, are always going to generate better outcomes, even if they need to take time away to take care of themselves, versus the employees who really don't care because they know they're not cared about and therefore phone it in. Right? Then your overall outcomes of whatever industry you're in are going to be diminished because no one's going to give you their best when they feel like you don't care about them at all. And I
Mhm.
try to address that because I'm hoping that anyone that watches this channel wants to be a good human and a good leader and actually take care of their people, because I do
Mhm.
believe leaders are there to serve their people, to give them the best possible experience so they can put out their best work, no matter what you're trying to do. And I think the humanity is missing. It's definitely missing from higher ed.
Thank you for spending this time with me today. I hope that you enjoyed it as much as I did. Talking with Helen and Cristina was a blast, and I hope that you took some really good feelings away from the conversation. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them in the comments below. And I want to say, for the benefit of all of my viewers, I created this space to empower women in leadership, but everyone who wants to live and lead with authenticity is welcome here. And if you are interested in private coaching and ready to get started, please connect with me directly. And until next time, stay true to yourself, lead with purpose, and thank you for watching.